Welcome back, Mando.
Oh, greetings, Bucketheads. Mevar Tegar. Welcome to our 326th Wedge-tastic episode of Mandivision. I am your host, Narguy Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small independent Star Wars podcast. We are so glad you're here. Hit us up on those socials at Mando_Vision on Twitter/X and Instagram, Mandivision at Blue Sky, and you, of course, email the show, mandivisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. All right, Buckethead Nation, I am here. We're doing the podcast, but I'll be honest, I don't think I sound very good. So bear with me. Hopefully the pipes will kind of warm up as we go today on the show. But yeah, hopefully my voice is not super irritating today, because I'd love to talk to you about another episode of Star Wars Rebels. But before we do that, a quick update. Last week, I talked about the Peacemaker episode that I will get out to you guys, and it is happening. I just found the files. There's a little bit more work to do on them than I anticipated, but that will be out very, very shortly, possibly the next day, the day after you hear this. All right? So that's the update on that. But I think we should just go ahead and dive into some Star Wars talk right now. You know, we have, I think we talked about Benedict Cumberbatch coming on board the Starfighter movie last week. And other than that, the Star Wars news has been basically ho-hum. Very, very quiet. Some new comics have come out in the last week or so. Another issue of the Star Wars Jedi Knights book, which was interesting. They're insanely fast reads, some of these comics. The Jedi Knights book in particular has been breezy, would be the best way to describe it. But it did set something up that I thought was very, very interesting. We'll see if it lands, if it pays off in the next installment. But if you're checking out the Star Wars comics, there is a new issue of Star Wars Jedi Knights available to check out. And it does have an emphasis on Qui-Gon Jinn. So that's always exciting, always fun. Maybe consider that for yourselves later today. Let's go ahead. Let's get our particulars out of the way for our Star Wars Rebels rewatch. You know all the good stuff that's coming. It's been interesting so far getting to this season, because obviously they hyped up Thrawn so very, very much, and they teased him very, very heavily in the opening of the season. But thus far, we are now into our 4th episode, and Thrawn, not so much around, and we focus completely on something different. Though we do get more back into the whole Rebels versus Empire aspect of the story in this episode. But yeah, no Thrawn. No Thrawn. All right, so Star Wars Rebels, Season 3, Episode 4, The Antillies Extraction. The Antillies Extraction. That sounds better. October 8th, 2016. Written by Gary Whitta. Gary Whitta, who was involved very heavily in Rogue One, and the screenplay for that. He's done many, many screenplays, been involved in many, many fine motion pictures. Had been spending an inordinate amount of time trying to get a Last Starfighter sequel / soft reboot kind of like off the ground. It still hasn't happened yet, which is disappointing to say the least, at least for a big Last Starfighter fan like myself. But we'll see what happens there. But yeah, so Whitta joins the writing team in Star Wars Rebels, and he creates for us a Wedge Antilles episode of the show. Pretty cool. It's directed by Sal Ruiz, and our primary cast for this episode, so many names you know. Taylor Gray, Ezra Bridger. Vanessa Marshall is Harrison Dula. Freddie Prinze Jr. is Kanan Jarrus. Tia Sakar, Sabine Wren. Steve Blum is Zeb Orielos, who's barely in the episode. Dave Filoni's Chopper. David Oluwelo is Agent Callus. Corey Burton is the bridge officer. Instructor Gorin and Rake. Keon Young is Commander Sato. Mary Elizabeth McGlynn is Governor Price. Trevor Duvall is Hobbie. Mario Vernaza is Volt Scaris. And Nathan Kress is Wedge Antillies. The plot for this episode: Sabine goes undercover as a cadet in the Empire's elite flight academy to help break out several young pilots wanting to defect to the rebellion. All right, friends, let's go ahead. We're going to get into it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to get into all the juicy deets. And you know what that means. It's time. Strap on your buckets. And let's go.
Get out of here. We'll hold them off. You're going to have to relocate the covert. This is the way. This is the way.
All right, from the jump, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I think this is a really strong episode. I like this episode quite a bit. It's very standalone, very self-contained. Little elements bleed in and bleed out into the episode that will carry over. Obviously, Agent Price, Governor Price and Agent Callus are in the episode. They obviously are carryovers, part of the overall story. It's a mini arc for Ezra, because he's sort of sidelined in this episode, and he has to learn how to kind of trust his teammates to do the job, right? He has to sit there and learn to be patient and trust that they are going to do what they need to do, and they are going to come back, which is a big lesson for Ezra to learn, in all honesty. So while it's a small element of this episode, it's an important part of his growth, and that's a good part. We focus on Sabine and her past as an Imperial cadet, which is why she's able to infiltrate the pilot facility, and because she knows those protocols. She's familiar with how an Imperial Academy kind of operates and runs. But I think the biggest element to the episode, obviously, is Wedge Antilles and Hobbie Clivian. And for old people like me, these are characters who have been dramatically affected by the Disney acquisition of Star Wars, by the dismantling of the old expanded universe. Yes, of course, massive changes to Han, Leia, and Luke abound with the decimation, with the elimination of the old expanded universe. But one of my favorite elements of the expanded universe back in the day, back in the 90s when it was at its peak, was the idea that other characters could shine, that other characters had an opportunity to stand up and differentiate themselves from the rest of our sort of iconic heroes, from the Hans and Lukes and Leias of Star Wars. And Wedge Antilles in particular was one of the biggest benefactors of the expanded universe. Wedge Antilles, a fan favorite character, one of the only characters to survive all three movies. So he kind of became a legend in his own right because of that. But the fans really got behind this character. Like, they really sort of propped Wedge up into this bigger deal than maybe he was ever intended to be. And as such, was a massive part of the expanded universe because fans wanted to know more about Wedge. We had a great backstory on Wedge from the old role-playing games that became part of his canon at the time. His parents ran that fueling station. The Empire destroys it. Wedge goes and joins the rebellion, right? That's sort of like the basics of it all. But of course, there's more to it. And we get an element of that here with the Imperial Extraction episode. Hobbie Clivian, another character who has been dramatically affected by the removal of the expanded universe, mostly because he's dead in Disney canon. There has been no Hobbie Clivian since Disney decided to dismantle the old expanded universe. Hobbie Clivian dies in the Battle of Yavin, and that's that. Hobbie Clivian was massive in the old expanded universe. He and Wedge in particular, big parts of the Rogue One books, the Rogue One comics, and that's just sort of scratching the surface, but that was where they were featured the most. Writers like Michael Stackpole used these characters to great effect and made them, fully realized, three-dimensional, gave them origins and backgrounds and things that we could all connect to and understand. And it was a great element of it. Now you go to Hobbie Clivian's, page on Wikipedia, and you go to the canon section, and it's like, died at the Battle of Yavin. It's like, no, man, that guy did stuff. And not only did the stuff he do during the time of the rebellion get gutted away, but like also big chunks of his backstory gone. And it's sad. It made me sad, the realization that Hobbie and Wedge have really been gutted, perhaps most heavily by the elimination of the expanded universe. So seeing them in this episode is nice, but it does have a little bit of a bittersweet note to it because I had such fondness for these characters. These are characters that through the comics, through the books, I really grew to love in a way that went beyond the films, right? Like you love the characters in the movie, like they're great, but they're small. They're kind of like one note. They're just sort of background. When you give them those origins and you give them those motivations that they did, to have that stripped away is such a bummer. It's another reminder that, while it's great that Disney is the the keeper of Star Wars, and we're getting new Star Wars content, which is lovely and wonderful and something to look forward to all the time. It came with a price. Not just the financial price, but the price of what was sacrificed for Disney to kind of get this clean slate that they wanted and that they haven't really taken advantage of. And that is disappointing. Obviously the book publishers are making a ton of money with these Essential Legends books that they're reissuing. And while they look nice, I have come to find out that most of the authors involved aren't getting any money for them, which bothers me to no end. I should probably reach out to Mr. Michael Stackpole and find out if that's the case for him as well. But the authors that I have communicated with have let me know that they aren't seeing a dime from these new Essential Legends books, and that buzz just bums me out so much. So yeah, there was a lot of give up for these characters, and that's I wanted to kind of put that out there before we get into the episode, just straight away. Sorry, kind of a long-winded opening for the episode. But yeah, these characters were significant in the time of the expanded universe, and it is disappointing. It's disappointing that, Wedge has been somewhat neutered in his, post-Return of the Jedi existence in the new Disney canon. You can say whatever you want. Maybe those old books were like, you read them now and maybe they were a little campy or something like that, or like a little bit too old school. I love those books. I adore them. I think it is a shame that Wedge doesn't have like this richer legacy post Return of the Jedi that he did in the old EU, in the old Rogue Squadron books and comics, and that bothers me. Like I don't particularly care for the take on Wedge in the Aftermath books. That's just me. But I don't care for most of those books anyways. I think the Aftermath books are, in my opinion, not that good. So, it is what it is, right? Let's go ahead and talk about this episode, though, because that's what we're really here for. So, our episode opens with a rebel transport bringing foodstuffs and relief efforts to another planet in the Outer Rim area, escorted by A-Wings, when the Empire shows up and destroys said transport and A-Wings. And it's sort of a throwaway line at the beginning of the episode, but one of the pilots of the transport says, like, basically insinuates, like, there's not a lot of pilots in the rebellion. We're lucky we got as many as we did. And then they all get destroyed. TIE interceptors, TIE fighters. It's glorious. The Empire doing its thing. And that is our opening, right? That's our sort of mission statement for the episode. Because as word of the destruction of these ships and this relief effort makes its way back to the Rebel base, Hera takes a very, authoritative, commanding lead position in the episode, which is nice to see. Because I feel like thus far in this season, Hera's been sort of sidelined. And so I like to see her kind of leading the rebellion here. And this is good stuff. So they have received a message from Fulcrum, not Ahsoka. We find out that Fulcrum is a title that gets passed around to various spies and agents of the rebellion. So we have a new Fulcrum whose identity will be revealed later, but we get very strong hints in this episode. and Fulcrum mentions that there are some Imperial pilots who are looking to defect, so the plan is to infiltrate this Imperial Flight Academy and get those pilots out to join the rebellion. Naturally, Ezra thinks it's going to be him, but Ezra is now too well known. He's a face. So the least known character is the one who wears a helmet, and that would be Sabine Wren, former Imperial cadet herself. So Wren will infiltrate the base and find these pilots that want to defect, which are Wedge Antillies, Hobbie Killivian, and a guy named Rake. There you go. Well, word of these suspected defectors have also made it to the ears of Imperial agents. So Callus and Governor Price arrive to root out these defectors. And there's a lot of fun back and forth on the episode. The simulator scene between Sabine and Wedge is really good. I like it quite a bit, showing sort of like why Sabine has so many problems with the Empire, right? Like the protocols they ignore, the orders to destroy a disabled fighter that is surrendered. All these things are really nice. And then Wedge being the sympathetic character that he is, understanding that like the rules of engagement shouldn't be to destroy a disabled freighter that has surrendered. So a lot of good stuff with those characters. It also bears mentioning that initially when this episode was conceived, the plan was for it to be Biggs Darklighter. There was to be a Biggs Darklighter extraction episode so that we could see Luke Skywalker's best friend from Tatooine getting out of the Empire, enjoying the rebellion. But the timeline isn't quite there yet. So they ultimately changed it to Wedge Antilles. So for now, if you still want to see, I guess you have to read it, right? Because and it's in the old EU, but Biggs's extraction is a big part of the Star Wars Empire comic at one of the runs within that series. I can't remember which one exactly. It might have been the second or third arc. I don't know. There's a lot of good stuff in that Star Wars Empire comic from the early 2000s. I do recommend checking it out. But yeah, Biggs's defection has been chronicled in some comic books. Good stuff. Check it out. I suppose like mentally you could just like sort of insert Biggs into the Wedge role, but it's great to have Wedge. It's great to have Wedge and see his story. Again, he talks about running supply ships. We don't get any mention of if his family ran a fueling station or any of that stuff. We don't know if his backstory has been changed dramatically or not. I suppose in my headcanon, it could still be a thing, but we don't get any clarification on that in this episode. Regardless, we have our Imperial ace pilot who's ordering them to do these bad things. Sabine and Wedge and Hobbie and Rake are all sort of like against it, puts them all at odds. Price is there with Callus. They're trying to interview the cadets. They're grounding the cadets. No one can take off. They got to find out who the defectors are. And then, of course, there's the opportunity to go into space and run a mission. And, let's see who's going to try and defect. So when Sabine, Rake, Hobbie, and Wedge start to make their way to Ezra and Kanan in the Rebel transport, Price pops off the wings. And it reminded me very much, and I think intentionally so, of the way you could pop off the wings of the old TIE Fighter toys in the 80s, the old Kenner ones. They had that was like the exploding action, those little buttons on the struts to launch the wings off to the side. Really cool. I thought it was fun to see that visually enacted sort of in the show as a way to disable these TIE Fighters at the Academy. Good stuff. So, of course, Price has now found her agents, her defectors. They are going to be interrogated, but, of course, they're going to escape. That's what they do. Sabine leads the charge, gathers the group, and they're going to make their way out. By the way, Rake dies. Spoilers. There's a reason why we don't know Rake. He didn't make it out of this academy. He didn't make the defection. He got shot down and blown up. But our heroes are going to make the escape this time. They take off in a TIE bomber. One of the new elements that I really not sure how I feel about is the idea that the TIE fighters have atmosphere, that you can take off your helmet in a TIE fighter cockpit. I like the old version of it, where it was like they don't have atmosphere, they don't have hyperdrives. The Empire was cheap; they wanted quantity, not quality. So that's why you had to have like these rebreather masks on. So when I see Imperial pilots taking off their helmet in the cockpit of the TIE fighters, I do get a little sad on the inside, and I just thought I'd share that with you guys. Because Scarce does that in this episode, and it made me sad. But surprise, surprise, our heroes do make it away with the rebellion. All this effort for 2 pilots to join the rebellion. It feels a little silly, honestly. Like you'd think, but this is how the rebels had to do things, right? Like you were only getting 1 or 2 pilots at a time. This is how you sort of had to like piece together your fleet. This is how you had to piece together your fighter squadrons. It was like 1 or 2 people at a time. You weren't defecting entire graduating classes of Imperials. So it feels like a lot of effort for just 2 pilots, but that's just sort of the reality of the situation, right? You can't get, an entire squadron to defect. It's 1 or 2 pilots who don't align with the Empire's point of view on many, many things. Again, it's a good episode. It's rock solid. It's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of stuff to really dive into to pull apart here. It's a straightforward, let's get Wedge out, let's get Hobbie out, and now we have the beginnings of Rogue Squadron. Isn't that kind of fun? Yeah, it sure is. So I dig the episode. It's 7.5 buckets for me. Obviously, big nostalgia factor on it, but very, very enjoyable. Self-contained, very isolated episode. You don't have to know the mythology of the show. You can just watch and be like, you know what? I'm a big Wedge fan. Let's see Wedge join the Rebels. Let's do it. And just throw this one on. 7.5 buckets. There it is. And we'll be back next week, friends. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, go out there. Be the great, incredible Star Wars fans that you are. Get ready for that Peacemaker bonus show that's coming this week. And we'll be back for episode 5 of Star Wars Rebels in season 3. Yeah, but in the meantime, remember, this podcast, it only ends one way, my friends. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
Admiral, we have enemy ships in Sector 47.
It's a trap!